Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Strickland, and today I'm going to present to you a theory called Constructivism. You're going to learn what it is, who founded it, and the effects that it has and the role that it takes in the classroom. So, Constructivism is a theory of knowledge that argues humans generate knowledge and meaning from an interaction between their experiences and their ideas. So it's an idea that instructors shouldn't tell students directly, but instead the students should get the knowledge and create their own ideas for themselves. And another theory that constructivists assume is that knowledge is constructed from the learner's previous year, and their knowledge regardless of how they were taught. So the teacher feels that the student, when they learn, it's previous knowledge that they're applying. So who is behind the constructivism theory? And that would be a few theorists. And to begin with, we have John Dewey, who is cited as the philosophical founder of the constructivist theory. And follows him are Jean Piaget and Jerome Bruner, who are considered the chief theorists among the cognitive constructivists. Lev Vygotsky is the major theorist. He is the major theorist among constructivism, and each theorist had their own different theories, but each one of them based off of another, so they kind of stack the previous theories' information upon their own and their own beliefs. So what are some of the differences that constructivists and traditionalists use that are enforced in the classroom? And overall, they are completely different. And some of those include the resources that students use in the classroom, such as constructivists believe that many resources such as technology could be allowed in the classroom, whereas traditionalists are more formal and stick more direct to the textbooks. And another difference is the teaching style. And a constructivist classroom is more centered around the students, whereas traditionalists have the classroom settings around themselves. And you can see, as the image displayed here on the PowerPoint, that the students are sitting in at tables beside their peers, whereas traditionalists are more formal and they'll have the desk in a line and not beside each other. And that is just because of the teaching style is so different. So another difference, excuse me, is the curriculum. And the curriculum from a constructivist is to assume that the student's knowledge is from meaning and experience and past experiences, and they have obtained their knowledge from what they've experienced and not what they've been taught, which is opposite of how a traditionalist believes. The curriculum for a constructivist is presented whole as a part with emphasis on the big concept, whereas traditionalist presents different parts to emphasize the basic skills. There are differences in how the teachers view the students in a constructivist classroom. And in a constructivist classroom, the students are emerging theorists about the world, whereas a traditionalist would view each student as a blank slate, and they're all going to start over. But a constructivist gives the student more of their own opinions and lets them form their own opinions. And a constructivist also lets them solve problems, and they want to inquire methods for them to ask questions, investigate, use a variety of these resources, whereas a traditionalist just wants you to know the answer, stick to the textbook, and move on. But a result from students being able to investigate and explore the topic, they can draw more conclusions and revisit those conclusions, and them exploring will lead to more questions, and more questions ultimately leads to more information that is being taught and that the children learn. So, as I've said before, in the classroom, students work in a constructivist setting. They will be engaged, they'll be reflective, they'll be collaborative, they will be problem solvers. If someone walked into a constructivist classrooms, it would probably not be silent unless they were doing silent reading. Ultimately, the goal for a constructivist is to engage the students, let them learn information from each other, because students ultimately learn so much from their peers. And that is where the teacher's role comes in. Although the students are working together and they learn from each other, the teacher is there as a process of peer interaction, which is mediated and structured by the teacher. And the teacher is known as a guide on the side, which means she or he engages the conversation and the topics, and the students get involved with the teacher, but then they can also get more involved with the students, learning each other's different views and aspects. And ultimately, that is a big deal for students, is when they have that chance and opportunity to learn what each other says and not just how they feel about themselves. The assessment is also different in a constructivist classrooms. Assessment should be used as a tool to enhance the learning and the teacher's understanding of the student's progress. And some tools that can be used, or in the types of assessments that can be used, are reflective journals, case studies, group projects, and role playing as a type of assessment a constructivist will use. These are just a few, but they're to enable that students do not stress that they are being assessed. The teacher is to consider to think about a topic and lead the student to construct new understanding. So a student may have a different point of view than another student on a certain topic, but as a constructivist teacher, it's their job to see where that student's thoughts are coming from. And if it's not in the right direction, don't just tell them, no, that's wrong. Guide them and let them see the new way that is also the more proper and correct way, but you don't just immediately put them down on their thoughts that they've had, because that isn't a constructivist belief, is to put students down. Like I said, constructivist teachers are there to inspire and engage and let the student emerge as their own while still learning new information. So a model that comes out of constructivist learning is the PAR model, and that is present, apply, and review. And it's based on research collected from many experiments, which promotes teaching the most effective learning for students. So it emphasizes the student taking more responsibility for their own learning, with the teacher acting more as a structure and a facilitator, which reflects back on the teacher being a guide on the side. So for this model to be effective in the classroom, all three of the areas need to be delivered. And to begin with the first one, presenting, it is pretty self-explanatory. The student is presented with new knowledge, concepts, skills, theories, and explanations that the teacher wants the student to learn, and to follow through with that. And for this complete model to be effective, you go to step 2 and you have the students apply. Applying this requires the students to carry out an activity that requires them to apply the material that has been learned in the presenting first stage. So the students in the second area will learn by doing. So they will be applying their knowledge to something, whether or a form of assessment that we've discussed earlier, which would be a journal or such, or however the teacher feels is necessary for the student to use that knowledge and show that they do understand. The final stage of the PAR model is review, and the students will understand what was to be learned. So the teacher will summarize. For example, in this lesson, we've learned multiplication. We've learned our 2's up to the 5th times table. That's just an example. But if students need more clarification on any subject, too, that this applies to, not just in mathematics, but there will also be final clarification. Don't move on to another lesson. If there are too many students confused, you don't want to leave students behind. Catch them up. And always review the lesson before you move on to the next. And in a constructivist point of view, they will emphasize the big key points of what was supposed to be learned and taken out of that particular lesson. So reading aloud would be a great lesson that I would choose in a PAR model. And the reason I chose reading is just because there are so many standards that you can pull from this. Okay, so reading aloud not only helps your students in improving their own reading by mimicking your fluency and vocabulary, but it also allows them to be engaged. And if they have questions, the book is right there. It's easier to discuss. And so an example that I would use would be to begin your lesson. I chose a book, for example, Stella Luna. And in the book, Stella Luna, there are some words that I would want to pull to discuss to my students. And so vocabulary would be my key in this particular reading lesson. So to present, I would let the students know there are going to be words that you don't understand in this book. Let's read the book, and then after we're done reading, we will discuss these words that I want you to learn. And of course, if there are any other words that students find difficult, make sure you ask that question. See if there's anything that they found in particular that was difficult for them to understand. But in my particular lesson, I would pull certain vocabulary words that I know that they could use daily, or not daily, but, just to enhance their vocabulary skills. And that's always what you want to do, is enhance your students, make them grow, let them learn more. So present the material that you're wanting them to learn. And then for them to apply it, I would have them write a few sentences using the vocabulary words that we discussed and talked about in class. And then I would take those up and review those and assess them based on the sentences that they wrote. Do they understand what we talked about? Are they using the words in the right sentences? And then at the end, review the words, discuss the words out loud again. Let them demonstrate. That reflects back on the role playing. Can they demonstrate these words? I know there are some words in there that they can demonstrate, so let them act them out, because next time the student thinks about those words, they will think about that student acting that particular word out, and it will stick with them. I have seen it, and it works. So ultimately, you might not realize that you will use how you will use the PAR model, but it comes into so many different roles and aspects in a classroom, and it really is beneficial to a student and their learning. So that is everything about constructivism. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to discuss constructivism and how it applies in your classroom, how it can be effective.